Welcome. Hi, everyone. We'll let everyone get settled. I want to introduce myself. My name is Reverend Stephanie Moffitt. I serve our conference vitality team as the developer of Fresh Expressions and a Table for All. And what that translates into is that I help people do things, new things perhaps, all the way on the spectrum from what are we going to do to I have a really good idea for doing something new. And so my role on the conference staff is to come alongside laity and clergy and ask those big questions. Who are we? What's going on? Where is God leading us? And what's possible? And so when Chris invited me to share with the district today as part of the district gathering, one of the things that is happening in the larger conversation about church vitality in general, congregational vitality in general, really is this question of what do we do with our buildings? And there are a number of resources out in the world that talk about this, address this, and provide new paradigms of thinking about church buildings. And so today's workshop is related to what the bishop preached on this morning and focused on this book, Fresh Expressions of People Over Property. Before we get too far in, you'll probably be able to tell from my voice, this is actually an improvement from this morning. I wasn't able to talk at all this morning. However, I have a very dear friend here with me, Matt Franks, who is the pastor at Castle Rock UMC, just 30 minutes or so?
Or so.
Up the road. And he actually partnered with our vitality team last year to use this book in his congregation as a resource to do some exploration work and visioning work for the folks at Castle Rock. And I had actually invited him to help me present today, like weeks ago, not knowing that I was going to lose my voice and be in the state that I am today. So I'm actually really thankful that he's here with us. And our conversation will focus on this book. Everything that Matt is going to share with all of you, because my voice will not last, is captured on the handout that you have. And I've also listed on the dry erase board some key ideas that came up for me. I was reminded of during Bishop's sermon this morning. And there are some related to the work of what do we do with our church building and how does it serve our ministry. These are some key takeaways, I think. They're not captured on your handout. If you wanted to write them down, take a picture, etc. My hope is that with the handout, you'll be able to engage and not feel like you have to write everything down since you've already got it in front of you. And so everything Matt will present today comes from what I put together around this book as a resource for all of you. And I'm hopeful at the end we have some time for questions and then a little fun giveaway. I have prizes for all of you, so get excited.
Chocolate?
No,
we're not that
cool. No exercises and no chocolate, sorry. Any questions before we get started though? Oh yeah, Kim.
Church building or church property?
Both and.
Okay.
Yes.
We're going with a both and.
Yes.
Because.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll let Matt take it from there.
So, like Stephanie said, I'm Pastor Matt Franks. I'm the United Methodist pastor in Castle Rock, Colorado. A little bit about myself before we really start going. I have served churches of all size. My very first appointment was a 2-point charge out in western Oklahoma of 2 congregations of 40 people apiece. And we took that congregation, the one church was literally about to retire and literally stop being a church, to actually now, even now, we've been gone almost 14 years, a thriving congregation in a small town of 700 people. And then the other church itself is sustaining so much that they are just adding on to their building even as we speak, and have served the 5th largest church in Oklahoma at the time when I was there. I served churches of 150 people. Castle Rock's around the 150 people mark. So I have literally seen the gamut of all church sizes. I really live under the belief that if your church building isn't open every day of the week doing something, you're not utilizing your property correctly. Your building is the biggest asset that you have to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. And how we utilize that really matters. When I got to Castle Rock, I came across this book, and I can't remember if it was Stephanie introduced it to me or whatever. I love books. I'm a book nerd and study a lot about church growth and how churches can be healthier. One thing I want to say about that is understand that church health does not mean numbers are bigger. Church health means there's a sweet spirit of the place. When people come in, they feel loved and cared for and safe. Kind of like those things that the bishop was talking about. You can't start talking people about Jesus until they feel comfortable and safe. And our buildings literally are our biggest asset that we have. When I got to Castle Rock, you couldn't even tell you were coming to a church building. Didn't have the name of the church on the building. There was one sign that was so obscure that you couldn't even know what you didn't know what you're walking to. When you would walk into the narthex, you didn't know you were in a church. Even when you walked in the sanctuary, there was conversation whether or not you were in a church. The big cross in the center kind of helped. But the attitude that we have shifted of being more relational, being more connectional with our community and beyond, has helped us grow in a different way. Not necessarily numerically, but in a way that people are coming to us now and feeling like, oh man, this is a great place. We love being here. We can tell it's a church. And I think that that's important. As we think about this idea, and I don't necessarily like the title of the book, People Over Property, because I think it should be people with property or people something. I'll talk to Abby again about that later. But I want to begin with a question. What role has your church building played in your life?
The building, not
The building.
not-
The building.
Go ahead.
Gives me a sense of family.
I feel history. It's over 100 years old.
150.
I just love walking in there because you just feel everybody that was ever there probably.
A safe place.
We don't have a church building. And my other church, I've only been there for 5 years. They have only been there a short time. It's an African-American church, and I think any conversation about not having one brings back 40 acres and mule. So it's really sacred space.
Yeah.
Even though it's not old for them, it's sacred space.
A key resource. We have about 14 AA Al-Anon meetings a week in our church.
Amen. Thank you for hosting those.
I was just thinking the number of times that I've been to our church for a funeral or to a wedding. And so that's, to me, that's a family outreach kind of thing.
Community groups, Boy Scouts, women's groups, book clubs.
And we host a pantry. It's open 2 days a week, and we have a lot of just community people.
We host a lot of community like cooking classes that CSU puts on, the extension service. We have a really nice kitchen. So they always like to use our church, even though they're built building to host those things in. And that springboarded us into English as a second language class. And we've had 4-H there, we've had 4-H exhibits there. We're pretty open to, school activities like they're feeding the basketball girls or they're feeding the baseball boys or whatever. We just say, yeah, here's key. just clean it up when you're through.
Yes. Yeah. I know for me, when I think of my home church, now granted, I didn't grow up in the life of the church. Like I didn't grow up in church. I didn't start going to church until I was 17. But for me, the church was a safe place for me. It was a safe place that allowed me to escape some things that are going on in my family life. It allowed me to escape things from school. And they provided me a safe place to feel like I could be myself. And I think when we think about our buildings, while those things are great, like those things that we do are great, the real thing is asking ourselves, like, what kind of relationships are we building when we host those things? Like when people walk into our building, do they know, like, does your building look like nothing's been touched in a couple of years? Does your building like actually have signage and language about who you are, about what you're doing? Does your building even have, my favorite is like we have this rotating screen like this, and our, like literally you now walk right into our narthex and there's a rotating screen with the announcements. So people that even come to all of our groups throughout the week, we have a group about every night of the week that are not necessarily part of our church. They know what's happening because of the digital sign. And I think that stuff's important. The idea really is about building relationships and how we go about doing that. That can happen inside a physical building, your property, but I also really believe it really needs to be happening outside of the property and what we're doing to build relationships outside the property. So when I started using this book, I used it as a ploy to allow me to continue doing the work that I was doing outside of the church. And it's not just something, well, Pastor Matt just tells us to go outside the walls of the church all the time. It was funny how many people in our administrative council have read this book. They're like, well, Matt does that. Matt does that. Matt does that. And he's been encouraging us to do that. And it was a year ago that we did this book as a team. It's been amazing to see our shift from being centric of, we need to get people here on Sunday mornings and even all those little groups. Like our focus has shifted from that to shifting to actually building relationships to build disciples for Jesus Christ. And so as we think about that today, we're gonna dance all around that and all the good things with that. And I'm gonna flow through these slides. Today we're gonna do why does this matter now? We're gonna talk about some theological foundations, some stories of hope, a discernment journey, and then maybe some next steps. Maybe we can get you out of here with some next steps along the way. I do know one of the things that Stephanie will offer you if you contact her, which that's her email address. She will send you what we did as how I utilized the book for my administrative council team. She'll send you that document that I literally gave it to them for us to go through as our administrative council. And we had a great, like a 2-hour meeting of just dreaming and scheming and really getting things forward. So that's kind of where we're going. A quote from the book: our properties are often our greatest burden and our greatest untapped resource. In my years of ministry, I have served really small buildings, and then been in buildings where we had more building than we knew what to do with. How we leverage that matters. And some of it is, let's be honest, some of our buildings need a little bit of TLC, and that's the headache. Some of it is that some of our space is not usable. A couple of years ago, I had some health issues that made it hard for me to walk. And I became really aware really quickly how inaccessible our church really was. So that leads to some really good conversation when you start to think about how we can utilize our property, but how can we make it a safe space where people feel welcomed and go. But we also have to acknowledge, though, that there are nostalgia things that we have to wrestle with when we're dealing with our buildings. I'm sure in most of your buildings, you have a sacred space that does not get messed with, right? There's usually one or two. I know where they're at in Castle Rock, and let's just say I mess with them all the time because I love to have those conversations. But the goal is to really, to me, the goal is how are we showing Christ's love? And how are we doing that with our buildings? How are we doing that with everything? And so to me, as we think about framing that, like that should be our end goal. Let's see. Why does this matter now? Mission tools. Buildings can be enabled to a ministry and not a drain of resources. One of the conversations I know we're having at Castle Rock is we're looking at, we have groups that rent our space. Is our rent up to par with what our expenses are? And when we've had that conversation, we've realized that they're not. We realized that our funeral fees were from 1974. You know how much stuff has gone up since 1974? And even one of the conversations we've had with our building, like with our funeral policy, has been really looking at, we've had a change in Castle Rock where most of our funerals are not using a funeral home. And so that's added pressure and added cost to the church sometimes because there's other things you have to do. So we're trying to figure out what does that look like. So I think those are some things we need to think about. How can we utilize our building as a mission tool, but make sure that it's equitable? Like, don't just rent out your building space at 1974 prices. That's not good. That's not being a good steward of the building that you have. Financial reality. Many of our churches are overextended. I really believe that. I think we do too much. I think the question we should ask is, how is what we're doing making disciples of Jesus Christ? And if we're not feeling excited about that or not being able to share the good news about that, maybe that's a good conversation about, is this something worth doing? Or like being able to answer like, hey, we host, 12, 13 AA groups. The largest group that meets at Castle Rock First United Methodist Church is a men's AA group throughout the whole week. There's about 30 to 50 of them on Tuesday nights. So I, as a pastor, and I know that, we don't schedule anything on Tuesday nights. We let the men have the whole church. They have the whole top floor. The bottom floor is our preschool, and that's our moneymaker. Like some churches have preschools. Find ways to make that equitable. While it can be a mission of the church, if you're not paying your staff well, if you're not covering your cost well, you're not doing it right. You've got to be able to charge in a fair manner that can help cover costs. Like, we have to be in that mindset. I think sometimes with our buildings, we've been too nice. And so space utilization. What's your biggest space in your facility that goes unused? Sanctuary?
5 acres.
Yeah, yours is a whole different space. So I know, like, for us, that's the conversation we have. How can we utilize our space knowing that we have a limited amount of space? How are we utilizing our sanctuary? How are we utilizing some other spaces to be able to do ministry? I think that that's a key thing, like literally doing, hopefully you do an accessibility audit of your building throughout the year. You should do a ministry audit and ask yourself, are you utilizing the space for ministry? And if not, how can you revamp space to make it more user-friendly? Community engagement. This is a thing that's very important to me, how our building looks to people when they come into the building. So funerals, weddings, anytime you host an event that's not yours, that's a great opportunity for the community to see you, and how your space looks matters. If it's junked out, man, people are gonna say, well, they don't really care. You want your space looking as nice as a hotel that you would ever go to. And ask yourself, like, when you walk into your space tomorrow, like, I think one of the things that Stephanie is wanting us to think about is missional eyes, like thinking about walking into your building for the first time. What do you see? What needs to change? Maybe there's like a calendar from 1985 on there. Nobody knows why it's there. We've painted around it. I was in a church that literally did that. They painted around a calendar that nobody knew why it was there. It was just there. But I think when we start to think about those things, like, I really asking ourselves, why does this matter? You'll start to see how you can start to utilize your building, and you have to do it. Like, it's something we can talk about this all day, and we can spend, all the things, we can say all the things, we can give you all the programs for all the things, but unless you're willing to do the work and really clean up your space, like, that's been the thing. We had someone give a little bit of money to paint our narthex. It looks amazing. It's just white. It went from being this really, that really famous color, and I think it might be actually in the hall, like that yellow, that's now yellow, like every hotel and every place is using, like, now that looks horrible because it's been there for 20 years. Well, we just went with white walls. So, what's really fun about white walls? You get to see where you have space to showcase ministries and showcase things, which is something we've really started doing. Scriptural foundations. Exodus 33. God's presence is not tied to structures. Good luck trying to tell that to a trustees group or your administrative council, because they'll say that it does. And there's that emotional side too that we have to wrestle with. Like, we really have to wrestle with. We have to ask ourselves, is the gift that we've been given, a building, because it's a gift, how can we utilize that to make a difference in our community? And if we're not, how can we change that? And how does our building show God's presence in this space? Luke 10, 1 through 9, sent with little, focused on people and peace. The disciples are sent out with like, hey, here's a little bit, take a little bit of things with you, go and do ministry. On Sunday morning, at the end of your service, does the person who's saying the benediction, did they tell you to go out and do good work? Mm-hmm. Take what you have. If we can do that, if we can start to really embody that, you'll be surprised at what will happen. New wine and needs new wineskins, Matthew 9:17. Can't go back 20 years ago and try to do something and think it will work today. You've got to figure out what, like, I was talking with someone who's in market research, and I was like, you're really an evangelist. Do you know that? And he's like, no, I'm not. It's like, yeah, you look at the data, you decide what people need, and you let them know this is why you need it. When we talk about doing new things, like, you can repackage things. Like, we brought back, one of the best things we've brought back is our dinner for eights. Now we've changed, we've shaped them. They used to be about dinner. Now we've said, hey, you can have a meal. You can have a meal. We call them meal groups. We even took the number out of it. We took out the barrier of saying it only had to be dinner, because some of our people are older and dinner is like 4 o'clock. And if they're paired with a group of 30-year-olds, like, that's not dinner. They're still at work. Yeah. So you have to do market research. Like, you have to understand what will work. Like, there's a lot of data out there. Stephanie can connect you with a lot of resources of being able to look at your community and being able to discern what can we do that would be new and great. And it can even be bringing back things that you did, but saying, hey, this is a new thing. There's new technology, there's all sorts of things you can do. But if you try to do the same thing you did in the early 2000s and you try to do that today, it's not going to work. And we have to be real clear on, like, we have to be real on that. The Wesleyan view. Church exists for mission, not maintenance. Did John Wesley have a church? Did John Wesley do his ministry literally sitting in his office Monday through Friday from 9 to 4? No. He was really clear. The world is his parish. And he literally modeled that for all of us. And so I hope that when we start to really, dive into this, that we live into the words that Wesley said, thy word is my parish. And if we can do that, yes, the building is a great place. We're utilizing it. However, the work that we do with the church is way outside the walls of the church. It's not just something we do inside on Sunday morning for an hour. That's not church. That's worship. That's to prepare you to go out into the world. And if we do that work well, then we will be able to thrive. People will know who you are. And that your property really should support and not limit your mission. The mission at Calumet, wow, that's a long time ago. It was like 16 years ago. The mission at Castle Rock First United Methodist Church, I say this every Sunday. You'd think I'd be able to, the mission at Castle Rock First United Methodist Church is that our mission is to share God's love and light with our community and beyond. And the way that we practice this, in everything we do, we ask ourselves, are we doing that thing? Are we sharing God's love and light? And so in worship on Sunday morning, when I do the welcome, hey, we're glad that you're here. Our mission is to share God's love and light with our community and beyond. One of the ways that we practice that mission, because we practice the things that we preach, is that we get to know your neighbor. So greet your neighbor in Christian love. And see, as you start to say those missions, don't let those missions be like a thing that was on the wall, and that's probably been there since you did it maybe 15, 20 years ago. Let that be the thing that drives what you do. Our mission has driven us in a way that we never imagined a year ago. We have people doing things that we never thought were possible because we were willing to just accept the reality, one, that we know that we have a limited space and we can't do all the things in our building space. And so people are starting to think about things and starting to venture out and to really take Wesley's word that the world is my parish seriously. So much so that I love our Tuesday morning Bible study got in this really great idea that, hey, Matt, can we Zoom our Bible study together, like our Bible study? Because we have several people that used to attend or are part of us, but can't be a part of us anymore because of health or distance. Yeah, let me show you how to set it up. And they've created a space now where people, like the very first week that they did it, they had a couple that was on vacation. The couple took time out of their vacation to come be a part of Bible study. Think about how they're utilizing their space. Our ministry care team that does all of our ministry care and support for our congregation, we don't meet physically. We meet online because all of us live all over Douglas County. And coming in, like for some of them, it would be over an hour drive for an hour meeting is not relevant. And so utilizing our stuff is important. While property is a good thing to have, it shouldn't be the thing that is the boundary that keeps you from doing ministry. And to me, that's what Wesley was really about. Literally went all over the place to all the places because he knew the importance of taking the gospel to the people. And the expectation is not to be at church he knew that some of those hard workers are not going to be at church on Sunday. And so he took the gospel to them. And that really should be what we're about. Do you want to share some of these stories? Because
These are examples from the book. So if you read the book, there's the way that the book is set up is under certain hashtags. So
let's call them chapters.
Chapters,
Yeah.
but they have a hashtag where.
And if you don't know what a hashtag is, that's the pound sign.
Yeah. So hashtag. But each one of these stories relates to one of the hashtags. So, for example, I think the chapter 4, Mr. Rogers' life, it's called hashtag Mr. Rogers, was the preschool transformation. So we won't focus on these too much. I was going to talk about them a little bit more, but there's lots of examples in here to activate your thinking that's the idea. That's the goal. Put those. But again, it's that key principle of mission over memory, right? And how by accepting a faithful step forward and leaving something behind, it's really hard work, but it's faithful work and it's holy work. And that's one of the things I put on the board. And, God is at work in a lot of places. This work is not limited to those places and those churches that have money and have excess, or it seems like they do, right? This is possible for anyone to hold on to and embrace and just move with God. So my hope had just been to focus in on a few of those. I'll let you read, though.
There's a lot of good examples. And even from personal experience, one of the things I remember, and Stephanie nailed it on the head, you can do amazing ministry and it doesn't cost you a dime. Yeah. You have people in your congregations that have resources and tools and gifts and graces that are not being tapped into. And one thing that I always remember is that several years ago, my last appointment, we were going to host the Chamber of Commerce social morning event. They did these social coffees where we do coffee, and then it was just a good time just to sit around and get to know new people, and it was kind of like a networking kind of opportunity. So we knew we were going to see about 150 to 200 people. I'd been going to these for about a year at the time, and I was like, well, we can host. We've got space. I knew we had space. We had more space than we knew what to do with. And I was like, let's utilize the space. It allowed people to come into our facility, get to see our facility, because we made sure that people knew what they were walking into. You think of it like when you walk into a hotel, you kind of know what's going on in the community because they put things up that's going around the community. And we were very intentional about when people came into our building, what they were walking into. But we asked everybody in the congregation, hey, we know that you have coffee mugs laying around that you don't want anymore. Maybe you got them from an event, or maybe you need to shed a few. Hey, why don't you bring them up here on this particular Sunday, and then we'll clean them, and then we will use them for this event. And so we had an overabundance of coffee mugs, because you know how that goes. Like, I mean, and what was really great about it is as I was telling everybody goodbye at the networking event, I was like, take your coffee mug with you. I don't want it. I have no space for it. But it allowed them to remember, like, if someone saw that random coffee mug, because some of them were really random. Hey, where'd you get that coffee mug? I got it at the Methodist church at this thing. Like, and so like those things that we do, like that didn't cost us anything. The chamber brought in the coffee. They brought in the deal. I mean, if you want to get technical, the only cost was electricity. But outside of that, like our congregation was able to make a connection to the community in a way that we wouldn't have ever, like we were just literally going to get the cups that you buy and hey, throw away, and like talk about a really good way of for environmental, like all the things that go good with that. You can do that. I'll let you on a little bit of secret here. Like you can do amazing VBS, and you don't have to kill the bank on VBS. I would definitely love to, if you're interested on how that works, I'll connect you with my wife. She has done several, and it's literally cost us very little to no money, because she's been able to leverage the congregation and the community to say, hey, here's what my needs are. And you know what's great? People are willing to give when people know what the need is. How often do we try to do an event and we don't tell people what we need? And we just like, oh man, it'd been really good if we would have had a few more pizzas. Well, how did the congregation know that you needed 20 and not 15? And being clear on those things. Like there are people who will maybe not put money in the offering plate, but they'll come to you and say, hey, I hear you're doing a great ministry networking thing. What do you need? We can do these things. We just started a thing on Sunday nights called the Disciples Table, and we invite people to make dinner. We have people making dinner for us that don't attend the table, but they'll make dinner because that's what they love to do. It's leveraging your things. And understand this, property and churches are not necessarily like the physical things, but also the things that people have and can give and are literally looking for a place to be connected in. People are looking for connection. And if we just say, hey, you would be an amazing finance team member, and that's all we want to use you for, like, no, people have so much more greater gifts than those things. Yes, there are people who are finance people. Please make sure they're on your finance team. There are people who are great trustees because they're handy or they have a knowledge of building, how to manage a building. Like, yeah, you want those people to be in those spaces. Maybe not in the children's ministry, or maybe not in anything else you're doing, but like find ways to utilize people's gifts. Like for me, when I was reading the book, that was like the biggest thing. How do we leverage our people to do amazing work without we don't necessarily need a building. It can work that way. Mm-hmm. Let's see. The discernment of journey. I think this is really good to think about. And as you start to process this, it's very key for us because it's something you'll go through. I know. So when I came to Castle Rock, the pastor had been there for 18 years. I knew that this place right here, naming the grief, that was going to be a long journey. I was thinking maybe 6 months to a year because I wanted to give them time to grieve, but I also wanted to allow me to have space to get to know them and to sit with them in their grief, to name their grief, but to also say we're not going to continue down the road that we have been continuing down. But naming that grief is important. We have to honor what may be lost. Like we have retired ministries in the last year because they were not being in that healthy, helpful community building thing. They were draining our resources. And so we honor those. Like I think of it like this. When a ministry dies, you should celebrate it. You should name it. If we can celebrate it and say, hey, this was good. This was this. It's no longer. You're allowing that grief when we remember those things, when you remember something, you feel good, don't you? Mm-hmm. And yeah, you lament that it had happened and you lament that it's over, but we're also people of the resurrection. So we should know that this is going to lead to a new thing. And so we have to honor what's been lost. Like The Castle Rock First United Methodist Church just celebrated 150 years last year. We had a year-long celebration. You know how like a lot of churches will do like a week or they'll do maybe one thing? We did a whole year of things. And let me tell you, all of them were different, but they leaned into who we were. We had a day of music. We had a Sunday of music. Literally all music. Sunday morning was all music because that's a really strong part of our congregation. We had a night of history. We have a lot of people that love history. We have a lot of people that have written history books of Douglas County. So we invited them in. And we had an amazing night. I'm not gonna lie. When they said we're gonna do history night on this night, I was not really thrilled about this. This was the least of all the things that we did that year that I was like, this is gonna be one of those ones that we say, hey, we tried and it went okay. We had 165 people at that event. I was blown away. I was sitting back at the sound booth just blown away that we had that many people because I was literally expecting maybe 30 to 40 people. And I'm expecting them to be the family members of the people who were up on stage. Like that's what I was expecting. But we had an amazing event. And when we honor those things that are lost, it helps us to be able to see I love how like it says listen deeply. It allows us to listen to God. And you know, when you're lamenting, you're crying out to God. And when we're doing that, we should also be actively listening to where God may be leading us or what God may be putting in front of us. That also allows us to listen to what the community needs are. Because I'd almost bet that a lot of people that live like literally maybe across the street from your church or within earshot of your church don't attend your church. Because usually that's the norm for mainline denominational churches. I mean, I'm not lying. The bulk of my people do not live within a mile of the church that come to Castle Rock. We do have some. And let me tell you, my 80-year-old who literally will walk the street and invite people, I've seen her do it throughout her walk. She walks every day. I've seen her invite people to church on her walk. And so that's important. But when we can listen deeply to the needs of God and to each other and being able to say, hey, what can we do next? Yeah, this thing has died. This thing is no longer working anymore. But what can we do next? And allow yourself to fail. Like I'm giving you permission to fail. It's okay. You can do it. Like we learn from our failures. Everything doesn't have to work. I have many failures in ministry, but they led me to other things because I refused to be held back by my failure. And I'm like, all right, so that didn't work. Let's go try this. And that's where if we do that, but if we put together like this, and I love it, a discernment team, to be able to look and say, hey, what's going on in our community? What are some needs that are not being met? And how can we meet those needs? You know, what's really great is we have, in a lot of communities, we have social services and things that we can connect into that we don't have to do in our space. And I think about it, like I think of food pantries. Like I love churches that have food pantries. I've served in two that have, and I've run those food pantries and had a great time. But I've also been in communities where the church didn't have the food pantry, but we knew we could help people like go work at the food pantry, give food to the food pantry. The Castle Rock United Methodist Church actually started the food pantry in Castle Rock. And so we tie into that. We say why that's important. We have 4 different four different things throughout the year to give them. And we remind them of our connection to them. But we don't have to do the work. We have a social agency that handles all the homelessness and all the things. When someone calls me and says, hey, I need a utility bill paid. Hey, we give our money to Help and Hope. Here's their phone number. You know, they handle our stuff. And people are willing to give to those when we do like the big Help and Hope Sundays. That's important to know because like, it doesn't mean you have to start a food pantry in your church. Now, if there's a need and it's not there and you have the space, explore it. What would it look like? Some of you, I mean, hopefully if you've been in a business and you run a smart business, like use those tools. Yes, you can use those business tools in the church. And it's actually a good thing. Like, don't let a pastor tell you not otherwise. And I think that's important. And that's where you build your team. And when you build your team, don't build your team with the same people who do all the things in the life of the church. They will kill everything new that you want to do. What you have to do is you have to find some of your newer people. We've had some newer people in the last year, and it's been really fun to get them involved in things. And we've been bringing them along, and they've helped us see things that we wouldn't have seen otherwise. And I think that's important. Make sure you have new people on your team. Don't just have the same 7 people that do all the work of the church, because you're not going to go anywhere, because they're going to come up with the same thing that they did 20 years ago. And they're just going to say, hey, look at this event. Isn't that the same thing that we did that we just that just died a few years ago. Yeah, but it's new. Well, not really. But I think that's where doing that community work is important. Getting to know your neighbors, ask questions centered on missions, this says ask the right questions. And I think when you ask the right questions is how do you want to connect people to your church in a way that their lives can be changed by what you do? And know what your strengths are. Play to your strengths. Do you know what the fastest growing demographic is in Douglas or in Castle Rock right now? Anybody curious? 65 and older.
And you should know that statistic.
I know that statistic.
No, everybody.
Yes, everybody should know that statistic. Yes, right.
So I know that for mine.
Yeah.
So I know that if I want to talk about growing the church, our families where I want to grow the church, not the fastest growing part, not the new people who are coming into our community. Most of the families that are younger, that have kids and things, don't even live in Castle Rock. They can't afford it. So knowing that grandma and grandpa, who have a lot of free time, a lot of resources, who are usually moving from Texas or California, who have some Methodist identity or ethos to understand who we are, let's go get those people. And so we've created, we have literally crafted programs and ideas with that thinking in mind. Not that we're not going to be, I just literally met with a family that has a 6-month-old yesterday. I'm really excited about them. But those are few and far between. And it's just because of what's moving in around us. And that's where doing that work, asking Stephanie, hey, Stephanie, can you help me learn Mission Insight? Mission Insight's an amazing tool. If you don't know what it is, you need to talk to Stephanie, because Mission Insight will help you discern what the needs of your community are. When I'd been there 6 months and I brought this thing that they'd never seen before in front of them, and I asked them that question, what's the fastest growing demographic in our community? And every one of them was shocked that it was 65 and older. Because then I asked the question is, so how are we going to go reach them? Because you asked me to go, they want me to go get young people. I'm a young guy, should go get young families, right? I come in with the mindset, I'm here to go get all people. And I'm not here just to yeah, I have a wife and kids, but that doesn't mean that we're going to be able to relate to those people. I can relate to older people better than I can people my age. It's just the way I work. And I think experimenting, don't be afraid to do new things. Yeah, it may fail. That's okay. You can always reboot. Think about how you can utilize your space. Think about how you can lease your space. There are a lot of churches, my last church I was at, we had a block-long building that we didn't use. And so before COVID, we literally laid out this amazing plan to rent it out to a couple of agencies to start nonprofits, to be a nonprofit incubator. It was going to be an amazing thing. COVID kind of took that away. So we were in reboot mode when we came back in real person. But I think thinking about how we utilize our space, utilize our people, that takes some experimentation, doing different things. Doing your Bible study at the local library. We have a group that's trying to get that off the ground, because there's meeting space at the library. We don't necessarily have meeting space.
This is the possibilities idea. The endless possibilities.
Yeah, the possibilities. And so literally look at your communities. Like I said, the town of 700, one of the coolest things that we ever did was we did a all faith except for the Baptists, because they didn't like any of us, VBS, where we literally closed off the block and we shared space of doing this amazing, it's been one of the best VBSs I've ever seen, because it was literally all the churches in the area except for the Baptist, because they wanted to do their own thing. Literally, that's what they tell us but every year we invited them to the table, because we wanted them to know that, hey, you can be a part of us. And so don't be afraid. And also relaunch. Sometimes something doesn't take off well, you can always come back to it. And if you think that there's something into it, if there's something to it, don't be afraid to do it. When we did the dinner for 8 groups, that's where we discovered that dinner for 8 is off-putting. Because if you're a single elderly person, you don't have an 8. So your group may be 7. And how does that feel? So when we removed the barrier of like we literally joked when we would make the announcement, hey, your husband can go to this dinner group and your wife can go to this dinner group. If you want to do that, please make a note of that on the form. So that way when we do the draft, and yes, we called it a draft. Our dinner groups, we had a draft. We literally sat in a room like this and we did the draft, like you do for fantasy football. Like that's what we would do. And so it was a lot of fun. Like church is supposed to be fun. So have like creative ways. And that's where like being in this space, knowing that there are going to be times where you're going to be back up here faster than you're going to be here. And this is an ebb and flow. It's not a linear thing. There'll be times where you do have to back up, and maybe your team, you have to build a new team. And don't be afraid to make it your own. So, key question to ask: where do you feel God calling you right now? What is God doing in your neighborhood right now? What is our building enabling or preventing us? And how might we reimagine your space for ministry? So, thinking about these questions, which one is speaking to you right now? And would anybody like to share?
One of the things that I mentioned, we have, one of the churches I serve has very small facility, but 5 acres. In a place that's visible, Marshall, around here. Right now, it's like a prairie dog field. Doesn't look very attractive, right? So, when you look at that church and pretty close to next door, there's a beautiful big non-denominational church, brand new. So, you're looking at these, what you're gonna do. So we're thinking about how can we reimagine 5 acres? Right? We don't have the building to do all the things that you're talking about, and that's okay. But there's things like that we're just starting to look at. Habitat, partner with Habitat, and they're working on bills to get churches to use their property and schools to use their property. So we're going to try to partner with them and see what they can do. So it's hard, but using the assets that you have, find out who does stuff with land, right? And if you want to have a ministry with folks experiencing homelessness, how can you do it? Or healthcare. There's another, can you bring in nurses or doctors? But some of it is, right now the space is an ugly building, a not so nice building, it's like a double wide, with 5 acres of prairie dogs. And so how do you find the finances to change that too?
And I think that's where you think of community partnerships, and I think that that's a key thing.
That's where a starting place of who your conversation partners are, to lean into what a next step looks like. So one of the key questions, not here but implied, is it's not just people already connected to the church, already part of the church, but people that have nothing to do with the church. When they see that field, what strikes their imagination? What could they see happening there? What's going on in their life? Right.
Yeah.
So let those marinate. So here's a few things I want to do to bring us to a close, because we had to start late, and so we're trying to get you out of here on time. A few things, and I'll recommend this as someone who did this with their church, and it has definitely revolutionized a few things that we were doing. Get a group of people together and study this book. Who thinks they drove the farthest? Where?
Oh, you did?
Where?
You or me?
Like?
Ordway?
I don't know where these.
I don't know where they are either.
You're
Southeast corner.
We're in the southeast corner.
Let's give one each of you.
Okay, so we got some gifts for you. So don't be afraid to put a group together and study this book. This is important too. Missionize. Walk around your building. Think about your space. Connect. Stephanie is an amazing resource. She has all these amazing resources over here. Don't forget to email her. One of the things she wants you to consider is thinking about, and she has this amazing little chart here called Missional Network. There are different ideas here that your church could tap into. And there are networks of people who are doing these things that Stephanie would love to connect you with and get you going. Like, seriously, like there's some really great tools and resources here that are great for you.
So this conversation of property and building is the starting place for the way that we reimagine ministry. On the table that we have set up in the lobby, there's multiple copies of this book, all about fresh expressions. Imagining being church is a fresh expression in any place you find yourself. And there's a distinct difference between being church and doing church, right? And so what Fresh Expressions invites us into is that being church world. And this initial conversation of building and property is the doorway, literally, into Fresh Expressions work of being church. So if you're interested in what the next phase or conversation looks like as you're starting to think about building and property, is the Fresh Expressions. You can take one of these that's on the table downstairs. And then there's lots of other books that I have down there that are just great resources. So you can peruse them and take a photo if something looks interesting. Trying to think, was that the last one?
The last one really is listen to the needs of your community. They're looking for you just like you're looking for them.
Yeah.
And you have something to offer them that can change their life. And so don't be afraid. You can do it. And remember that God loves you and is calling you to love on your communities. May God be with you.
Thank you all for
Thank you all.
being here.